once again, sorry for being late. It's not good to be late. So I apologize for that.
Put this a little closer to choosing.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد سيد المرسلين وخاتم النبيين وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت يا حي يا قيوم تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا اللهم ذكرنا ما نسينا وعلمنا ما جهلنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من حال أهل النار. We remind ourselves to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah in attending this session of Islamic knowledge, because having the sincere intention is a requirement in order to get the reward. So the Muslim, whenever they perform a good deed, they have to have the sincere intention before, in order to get the reward, in order for them to get the reward. And the reward is defined as the recompense that the Muslim receives in the hereafter for the good deeds that he has done in this life among what makes him happy. An example of the reward is like the grave expanding, the grave of the pious Muslim expanding approximately 105 feet by 105 feet, and the grave being illuminated with a light that is similar to the light of the full moon, and the fragrance of paradise being present in the grave. Those are all examples of the reward that is promised to the pious Muslim in his grave. So we remind ourselves, we as Muslims remind ourselves to have the sincere intention when doing a good deed, so that we can get the reward. And the example, or an example of a sincere intention, is having present in the heart that the reason you're doing this deed is seeking the acceptance of Allah and not the praise of the people. So the reason that, whatever good deed that the Muslim is doing, the reason that he's doing it is because Allah ordered it, or because Allah promised reward for the one who does it, or because the Prophet ﷺ ordered us to do it, or because the religious law encouraged it, etc. These are all examples of a sincere intention. So remind ourselves to do that. Remind ourselves to have a sincere intention so that we can get the reward. In applying the verse, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ, which is this verse. It means it's a command for the Muslims to help each other in obedience, to help each other obey, and it is a prohibition from helping each other to do sins. So, in compliance with that verse, we remind ourselves to have the sincere intention in attending this session. Once again, I'm sorry for being late. The universe and our purpose. So, even though it is a broad subject, so I'm going to try to cover as much as I can without digressing too much. So, I'm going to go right in and answer the question. To define the universe, it is everything other than the Creator. So the universe is everything other than Allah. So the universe is the creation. That's the universe. And our purpose to worship. Our purpose is to worship the Creator exclusively and to believe in all his prophets and to obey them. So that's the purpose, our purpose as human beings, very explicit. And the proof for that is the verse from the Quran, قال الله تعالى وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون, from the chapter of Ad-Dariyat, verse 56. So right away, that's the definition of the universe, and that is our purpose. So without trying to go around it in any way. Next is how Muslims can mentally establish the truthfulness of the revealed laws, such as the prohibition of alcohol and the creedal tenets of Islam, such as the existence of paradise and hell. So in Islam, we give regard to the mental proof, because in the Quran, Muslims are encouraged to use their mind. We're not encouraged to cancel the mind. We're not encouraged to nullify the mind. There's no such thing in Islam as an aspect of our religion that contradicts the mind. The religion does not come with anything that contradicts the mind, the sound mind. So in our religion, there's no such thing as overriding your mind in order to still be a believer. So even though we're not like the philosophers who make the mind the basis for knowledge. Rather, we say that the basis is the revealed law, and the sound mind testifies to the validity of the revealed law. The sound mind testifies to the truthfulness of the revealed law. So we can mentally establish the truthfulness of the revealed laws, such as the prohibition of alcohol and everything that falls under that category. So what we're going to go through, inshallah, it'll help anyone to field these questions if anyone ever asks them about, well, how do you know that this should be like this or this should be like that? Because it comes down to what people call ethics and morals. Those are things that you cannot use your mind to make a deduction to come to a conclusion about. So you can infer certain things with your mind because we're given that capability. That's what our minds are for, to make deductions and to infer things and to come to conclusions. But there's some things that you cannot reach the knowledge of those things just by making an inference, just by making a deduction. It has to be revealed. It has to be taught. So, and that the types of things that fall under that category is like the issue of what's good and what's bad, what's right and what's wrong, the issue of what's ethical and not ethical, what's moral and immoral. Those issues, how can someone use their mind to come to that conclusion? There's no way, because people have different ways of thinking and people have different dispositions. So there's no way that you can use your mind to come to that conclusion. Rather, that has to be judged by a standard. It has to be judged by a standard. Or, for example, like what happens after we die. The certain things that are unknown to us because we never have the opportunity to experience it and then tell about it. So like what happens after you die, the existence of paradise and hell, that's why I use that as an example. The existence of paradise and hell. Somebody would say, well, you've never seen it, and anyone who's supposedly scientific, they would say, well, there's no way to scientifically prove it. Well, these are things that are only known through the revelation. Those are things that are only known through by them being revealed. So how can we, how do Muslims, for example, prove that? We're going to go through that. In 8 steps, there's 8 steps. And each step builds, each one is required to build on and to move forward to the next one. So the first one is confirming the routes of knowledge. What do we consider to be a source of knowledge. That's the first thing. And we're going to go through each of them. Then, confirming the existence of the universe and that it has a beginning. So, as you're gonna see, you might be able to skip some of these because usually the person, they do admit that we are here. They do admit that we exist. And I know that nowadays it might be becoming trendy for people to think that this isn't real. But even if that is the case, you can start from like the first beginning steps. We can prove that the universe is real, and it's somehow shocking that you might actually have to take some time to convince someone that this is reality, that we're actually here, that this is not a dream, it's not a simulation, it's not a video game that somebody's playing. Alright, so the third thing, confirming God's existence using the intellectual proof. Of course, because in the Quran it's explicitly mentioned that God exists, but if I were to quote that verse, for example, to someone that does not consider the Quran to be a revelation, then they would ask for a mental proof, and we can provide mental proof, of course. Actually, we're the only ones who can provide mental proof. Everybody else cannot provide mental proof. Confirming that God is the creator of the universe and that he does not resemble the creation. This is a very important part because it is exclusive to our creed. It is exclusive to the creed of the Muslim that God does not resemble anything. God is the creator of everything. Therefore, before time and place and images and shapes and dimensions and length and width and depth and colors and sizes and volumes and masses, before all of that existed, God existed without a beginning. So those things did not exist and God existed without a beginning. And after he created those things, his existence did not change. And we're going to explain why that is. But so we say that God does not resemble anything in the universe. God is not like anything in the universe. Because whatever is like me is not God. Whatever is confined to a place, whatever is bound by time and space, whatever is limited, whatever has dimensions, whatever has any physical aspect, whatever is attributed with an organ or with an emotion or with a beginning or an end is like me. And I'm not God, for sure. And anything that's like me, I know for sure that it's not God. The fifth is confirming the existence of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which can be easily done. Also confirming that he was a prophet and messenger, which we'll go into that. Confirming that he was a prophet and messenger, because that's the important part. Number 7 is confirming that the Prophet ﷺ was truthful in everything that he conveyed from Allah. So that part leads us into the Quran. So we're going to go through each of them, inshallah. Are there any questions so far about anything that I'm saying? Am I going too fast? No? I see some blank stares. I see some. Good? Okay. Routes of knowledge. So, in Islam, we take knowledge seriously. Knowledge is important. The human being is encouraged to be knowledgeable. Ignorance is dispraised. Ignorance is not a good thing, to the extent that even ignorant people, they disassociate themselves from ignorance. So ignorance is so dispraised, and it is such a not a good attribute that even the ignorant person affiliates themselves with knowledge. So in Islam, we value knowledge. Knowledge is necessary. So we have the routes of knowledge. The scholars of Islam, they said that the routes of knowledge are 3. The 5 senses. This is one of the ways that we know things is through our 5 senses. So this is how the human being perceives things. You look at something and automatically you recognize that its color is such and such. You touch something and automatically you recognize that that it's hot, or that it's coarse, or that it's smooth. You smell something and automatically you recognize that it smells good or that it smells bad. You taste something and automatically recognize that it's salty or sweet, etc. So that's knowledge. I'm going to go through each. I'm going to explain explain each one individually, but just now I'm listing the routes. Truthful information. This is another route of knowledge, truthful information, and that also breaks up into two categories. You have the mass witness transmission, and then you have the truthful transmission, something that is not by mass witness transmission. I'm going to explain that too. And the sound mind. The third is the sound mind. So using the sound mind to deduce, to make deductions, using a major premise, then a minor premise, and then coming to a conclusion. This is, as Muslims, we are encouraged to do that, and we're ordered to do that. We're ordered to look at the creations and the way that the sun comes up every day, and the way that all those things are interconnected with our lives and the ecosystem and all those things that people in science that they're amazed at, and that when they actually focus on and they dissect, they get even more amazed, which also surprises me, because since they know exactly about how intricate and sophisticated these creations are, some of them they would still negate the existence of God. So first, going through the five senses. So first I wanted to mention, before going into them, the knowledge that takes place by way of any of the five senses is definite and certain knowledge. It's definite and certain. So it cannot be negated. Hearing, we know, everybody knows the five senses. So this is a power that's embedded in the nerves in the bottom of the ear canal, through which sounds are realized by way of airwaves adapted to the manner of the sound. So that's the scholarly explanation. So basically, those airways reach the canal, and upon that, Allah creates the realization of the sound in the self. The realization of the sound in the self. And you'll notice, as I read these off, that these tools or these instruments, they're based on cause and effect. So usually if a person has a functioning ear, usually they will hear. But it's not inherent. It's not necessary that this would occur. Because as Muslims, we believe that Allah, that the Creator, He's the one who creates the ability of the person to hear. Even if they have a sound instrument, even if they have a sound organ, but their hearing is contingent upon whether or not God created in them this ability. To bring it closer to your understanding, if, for example, the nature of a knife, for example, is to cut. So normally, according to the norm, if you run the blade of a knife on something, it will cut it. But the knife does not create the cutting. The knife is not creating the cutting, because if that was the case, then these things would be necessarily constant. That every time you run a blade across something, it would cut. Or like the nature of fire is to burn, but fire does not create burn. The nature of food is that it takes away your hunger, but food does not create the feeling of satisfaction from hunger. Water, the nature of water or drink is to it quenches the thirst, but it does not create the quenching of the thirst. That's the point I was trying to make with that. So even if you have a sound instrument, but Allah is the one who creates the realization of the sound in the self, because Allah, or there's only one creator. No one creates except the creator. Oh, I see. Sight. So this is obviously the power that is deposited in the eyeballs. So the instrument of sight is the eyeballs, and so the person sees colors, shapes, and other things, the realization of which is created by Allah upon using this ability. So the person, this is created for them upon using this ability. Smell. This is a power that is embedded in the nose. Scents are realized by way of air, adapted to the manner of the odor. The air reaches the nostrils, and Allah creates the realization of the smell after that. taste. It is a power spread throughout the nerves on the tongue, through which flavors of those things that have flavors are realized. Upon being mixed with salivary fluid in the mouth and contacting the nerves, Allah creates the realization. So, like I said, I was going to repeat that over and over. Touch, and some would say sensation. It's a power spread throughout all of the body, through which heat, coldness, moisture, dryness, and the like are realized. Upon connection and touching, Allah creates the realization. These five senses are obvious and their existence is confirmed. As for the any questions about that? Five senses, pretty straightforward. Yes? There's no sixth sense, by the way. People have intuition. Intuition, yes, but there's no sixth sense. The scholars of Islam, they refute that. But there is intuition. You can have intuition. Intuition is different. Truthful information. The second route of knowledge. Truthful information is of two types. The uninterrupted mass witness transmission. So this is defined as a large group of people physically witnessing an event, and their number is large to the extent that the sound mind deems it impossible that they would conspire to lie, that they would get together to agree to a lie. This is called uninterrupted mass witness transmission. And the condition for this to be a route of knowledge is that in each level, at each point that is passed on, it has to be a large number of people that the mind dictates that it's impossible that they would corroborate, they would conspire to lie. So it has to be an event that is physically witnessed, either by them seeing it or hearing it, not by hearsay.
Can it not be grouped though? Like what if a large group of people witnesses an event and considers that event to be one way, when in reality something else was going on but they weren't able to see it?
Can you give me an example?
I mean, it just came to me right now. I can't think
Oh,
of it immediately, but I think that I can think of a hypothetical scenario where that could happen.
Well,
People interpret something because it appeared a certain way, like they were calm.
it depends on your hypothetical scenario, because when a large number of people they witness something, it's pretty hard for them to agree to a lie. It's pretty hard for them
No,
to
I'm
agree.
not saying that they do it.
They would just perceive what or they would relate what they perceive.
Yeah.
So what's beyond that, like the details or what this means, they might not perceive that or recognize that, but for sure they can all agree that this happened. They can all agree that this happened. Let's say a tragic, like something tragic, like let's say a building collapsed, right? And like everybody in the street, they saw the building collapse. So maybe one person would say it collapsed because it was hit by a missile. Maybe some other person would say it collapsed because a plane flew into it. Another person might say it collapsed because somebody demolished it from the ground up. But the fact of the matter is that everyone saw a building collapse. Nobody can deny that. Nobody can deny that this occurred.
So what you're saying is, if there is where there's commonality between a large group of people, that we should take.
I'm sorry, the last part.
I'm saying what you're saying is where there's commonality between a large group of people, that we should take.
What I'm saying is that if a large number of people they witness something and they convey that to another large number of people, then no one would be able to deny it. Nobody would be able to say that it's not true. Nobody can challenge that. And I was going to give an example just so that it would be easier to understand.
Not enough that you said, like the most obvious example of a lot of people thinking something to be true, like we as Muslims know it's not.
give me like which like what?
When it was made to seem as though Isa alayhi salam was killed on the cross.
I'm glad they mentioned that because the scholars they mentioned that. So what she's saying is that in some cases there would be a group of people that, or it'll get to a certain point where a large group of people, they would all say the same thing, but it would not be the same as uninterrupted mass witness transmission, because in one of the levels, in one of the sections, they would be missing that that condition of it being witnessed by a large group of people. So she mentioned what the Christians call the crucifixion, and supposedly that they witnessed Prophet Jesus alayhi salam being crucified. And so since they witnessed it, supposedly that it would be like uninterrupted mass witness transmission, but that is not the case, because number one, the number of people that were there, they weren't a large number to the extent that the sound mind would deem it impossible that they conspire to a lie, and they were a ways off, so they were observing, and that small number of people, they were observing from a distance. On top of that, the person that was crucified, because we do say that somebody was crucified, but it was someone that was made to look like Jesus, alayhi salam. That's why, if anyone has ever noticed or studied the book that the Christians use, you would see that when what they believe is Jesus is being brought to in front of the ruler, he would say, what do you say? What do you say to these charges? Or show us a miracle, etc. And he just stays quiet, because in reality it's not Jesus. It's someone that was made to look like Jesus, because they volunteered themselves for that, to be martyred in that way. But they obviously, since they're not prophets, then they wouldn't have the ability to perform miracles. But before that, Prophet Jesus, he would perform a miracle when he was asked, when he was challenged, he would perform a miracle. But in that scenario, when what they claimed he was brought before the ruler, and he was telling him to defend himself or to show a proof, and he stayed quiet. He didn't, because it wasn't him, it wasn't Jesus. So, to answer your question, if the original source was not as many as we have described, a large number that the mind dictates, or the mind says that it's impossible that they would lie. Rather, the big number of conveyors took place later. It would not necessitate definite knowledge. Examples are what was conveyed by the Christians about Jesus being killed, or was conveyed by the Jews that Moses said that his revealed law will never be abrogated, and there is no law after this, because the Jews, they claim that Moses said that his law will remain permanent, and that there will never be a law after it that changes it. That's why when Prophet Jesus alayhi salam, when he came with a new law, they rejected it. The scholars of usul, of the fundamentals of jurisprudence, they said that the issue of what the Christians claim that Prophet Jesus was killed, it's not considered to be uninterrupted mass witness transmission, because their number was small. Their number wasn't large to that extent. Even though later on, the people that say that Prophet Jesus was killed is large, but at that beginning stage, this condition was not fulfilled. At the onset of the event, what they witnessed was missing that large number. Some examples of uninterrupted, or information that we know through uninterrupted mass witness transmission, is like the existence of any historical figure. So if you walk into a room with people and you say, did Napoleon exist, or did Hitler exist, or everybody's going to say yes, and everybody's going to be sure 100%, nobody will doubt that. And anyone tries to second guess that or like try to deny that, then they would be looked at. They would not be taken serious because everybody knows that Hitler existed, that Napoleon existed, that the Civil War occurred, that China exists. Usually in these types of sessions we use China as an example because usually not many people have been to China. Anybody here been to China? Okay. Besides you. Everyone, all of us, I never been to China. All of us, we confirm 100% that China exists. Have you ever seen China? No. You ever been to China? No. But you know that it exists. You have no doubt that it exists because of the uninterrupted mass witness transmission. Yes? Do we understand this concept? And the same thing for the Civil War, Napoleon, and Hitler, etc. So truthful information is of two types. This is one type. The uninterrupted mass witness transmission is undeniable. No, it doesn't require any research. It doesn't require any fact checking. It doesn't require any vetting. It's just you take it as it is because the number of people is so large that the mind says it's impossible that these people all conspired to lie. Then the second type is the news conveyed by a prophet. So this is where the majority of the information that we as Muslims have and believe in wholeheartedly without any doubt is because of the news conveyed by a prophet. So this is something that perhaps many people are not accustomed to this concept, but yes, there were men that were sent, that were chosen by the Creator, and they were bestowed with the mission of delivering the message, delivering the revelation, delivering the information that the human being needs to be successful both in this life and in the hereafter. How to properly conduct themselves as a human being and how to properly live on this planet with other human beings, etc. And what is just and what is unjust, what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong. Because there's no way that you can know that just by using your mind.
What about when that conflicts with like part A? So like what if that conflicts with uninterrupted mass witness transmission?
The news conveyed by a prophet.
Yeah.
That would never happen.
So then like when you use the example with the Jewish people, right? Where that doesn't count because there weren't enough people, but that was also news conveyed by a prophet, right? So like those would be
What part?
well because they say that Moses claimed that was the final.
Yeah,
word,
but
right?
he didn't, obviously.
But that would be news conveyed by a prophet, but then there's not enough people.
Prophet
so like,
Moses never said that his law is permanent. That's what I'm trying to say. That Prophet Moses, they say that about him, but it's not true. Because the prophets, they know that if a new messenger comes after them, that their laws would be abrogated, meaning that the time for those laws to be in place has expired, and they have been replaced by these new laws. Is that clear? All right, the sound mind. Here we go. The sound mind. Oh, I pressed too many times. The faculty given to some creatures by which they distinguish between good and bad. So that is because the definition of the mind. That's the definition of the mind. The definition of the mind. The faculty given to some creatures by which they distinguish between good and bad. So the mind is an attribute. The mind is an attribute. It's not an organ. The mind is not an organ because goats have brains, but they don't have minds. So the mind, that was attempted. And Muslims are encouraged to use their minds. We are encouraged to use our minds. We are not, there's no such thing in Islam as blind faith. The Muslim is encouraged to think. There's many verses in the Quran that explicitly point or explicitly praise those who use their minds, and that those who use their minds are guided. I want to quote one. Like this verse. إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا سبحانك فقنا عذاب النار. So this verse means, surely within the creation of the skies and the earth, and in the difference between the night and the day, there are certainly signs for those who have sound minds. Those who remember Allah while standing, sitting, or on their sides, meaning that they glorify God with their tongues, while standing, sitting, or on their sides, like laying down. And they think about the creation of the heavens and the earth, and they say, "O our Lord, you have not created this without wisdom. You are glorified beyond the attributes of the creatures. You are glorified beyond being attributed with the attributes of the creations, so save us from the torture of hell." This is one of the many verses that are like this, that they refer to that in the creation of night and day and the skies and the earth, that there's signs for those who have sound minds. Also another verse, أَوَلَمْ يَنْظُرُوا فِي مَلَكُوتِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Did they not look into the kingdom of the heavens and the earth? Meaning, did they not contemplate or ponder about the kingdom of the heavens and the earth? Also another verse, this one also emphasizes how important it is to use the sound mind. This is from Surah Al-Mulk, from the chapter of Al-Mulk. وَقَالُوا لَوْ كُنَّا نَسْمَعُ أَوْ نَعْقِلُ مَا كُنَّا فِي أَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ. This means that the non-believers will say, after they're in hellfire, had we listened to the warnings of the messengers as seekers of truth, and had we listened sincerely to what the messengers, what the prophets were telling us, and had we used our minds by contemplating and reflection and making inferences, we would not have been among the inhabitants of hell. So this is a strong proof that in Islam we're encouraged to use our minds. Now, a short digression. There are some people that affiliate themselves with Islam, and they disguise themselves as Muslims, and they look like Muslims, and they say the words that Muslims say, and they say about themselves that they are Muslims, and they completely, they have a crusade against using the mind. They do not, they come to a Muslim, and they try to make him feel bad for asking a question that's based on reflection, or that's based on, for example, that person that affiliates themselves with Islam and that they are against the mind, they would say something claiming that it's Islam, and then that Muslim, just because he has common sense, feels like there's something like not right about that. So they might ask, like, "Oh, that doesn't make sense," and then that person will say, "No, you have to believe it just how it is, and you cannot think." They literally said you cannot think, and that is wrong. That is not Islam. For someone to claim that is Islam, anyone who tells you not to think is bad. Anybody who tells you not to think is bad. So in Islam, that doesn't exist. Now, the reason that that person that affiliates himself with Islam, that person that's against using the mind and claims to be a Muslim, the reason he wants to ban you from thinking is because if you thought, you would realize that he is misguided, that he's really not representing Islam, that he's really not on Islam, which is also the case with anybody else outside of that context that tells you not to think. Anybody that tells you not to think is because they want to keep you in the dark so that they can exploit you, so that they can do something to you, but because they want to use your ignorance against you. So in Islam, that does not exist. In Islam, we do not encourage people to be ignorant. We do not encourage people not to think. We do not. So those people that affiliate themselves with Islam and that claim to be Muslims, that are against thinking, those are the extremists. Those are the terrorists. Those are the people that they attribute bodily attributes to Allah, and they believe and claim that God is sitting on the throne, which is not an Islamic belief at all. And we're going to mention some about the Islamic creed after we get to the 8 steps. But these people, they have different names. They have different names. But they are known in a lot of places as Wahhabis. They are known in a lot of places as Wahhabis. So, and they themselves, they call themselves Salafis, but which is just a way for them to try to make people think that they are following the authentic teachings of Islam, but they are categorically not. The people that they follow, they came 600 years after the Prophet ﷺ and the companions. But they tried, because they have a strong propaganda machine, and because they have a lot of money, they make people think that they are the ones that are like the authority or the prominent ones in the Islamic world, but they are categorically not. And these people, they encourage others not to think, they encourage the Muslims not to think, they encourage the Muslims not to use the mind when there are discussions about certain issues. They completely shut their minds off, and if you try to, talk to them for their own sake, so that they can hopefully come to the light, they might even plug their ears with their fingers. This has been witnessed, that when you try to speak to them with proof, with intellectual evidence and with textual evidence, they'll plug their ears. So that was my short digression. Beware of those people. They are,
what makes the mind sound? What do you mean by sound?
What I mean by sound is that it's that there's that doesn't have a defect that prevents the person from making basic inferences and basic deductions. Because some people, their mind is not complete. Something's missing from it. So basically, they're insane. What's meant is the person that's not insane, someone that's not insane, someone that they can know the difference between a human being and a door. That's the most definition that I have for that. Also that they're not, their mind is not clouded or altered in some sort of way through a substance or something like that. So the sound mind, meaning the mind that is not incomplete, or that it has a defect that prevents it from making basic inferences. Huh? Alright, so we mentioned that, and Muslims aren't cursed, these are Mondays. Alright, so confirming the existence of the universe and that it has a beginning. So we explained the routes of knowledge, so now we're getting into the second step. So the first step was clarifying the routes of knowledge. The second step is clarifying that the world, that the universe, has a beginning. And that's very easy. So major premise, everything that changes has a beginning. Everything that changes has a beginning. So automatically you make that judgment. Minor premise, this universe changes. And we witnessed that. Remember? So keep in mind how we correlate that with the routes of knowledge. How do you know that the universe changes? Because I witnessed it. I experienced it with one of my 5 senses, or with all of them. Yes?
I'm curious, where does this major premise come from, that everything that changes has a beginning?
Okay. Now, there is a detailed explanation to that and a short explanation, so we'll go with the short one. The short explanation is that a change in and of itself is a beginning and an end. So, to bring it closer to your mind, the state of being still, if I observe something being still, and then I observe it moving, now I have observed that its stillness has ended and its movement has begun. So that's what changes are, beginnings and ends. And so since we witness the universe change, then we know that it has a beginning for sure. Because whatever is made up of beginnings and ends, then for sure it has a starting point.
So where,
Is that clear, that part? Yes?
Talk to you later.
Okay, inshallah. No problem. So the minor premise is that this universe changes. Thus, the conclusion, thus, this universe has a beginning. Simple. Very easy. It's not like, it's not, just, just because something is simple doesn't make it less, I guess, heavy. Just because something is simple doesn't make it less heavy. It doesn't have to be like wordy and like so like intricate to the point where like you don't even understand what's going on. It's just really big because I have no idea what is being said.
I'm sorry for backtracking, but I just wanted to ask about the uninterrupted mass witness transmission. Is it correct that you said that it's based on those people physically witnessing
Yes.
through the senses? What if we get to the point where those original witnesses are all gone, and when it's passed on, does that become hearsay?
No. So those at every level, it has to be passed on. Or when it's passed on, it's passed on to a large number. And obviously, that second generation, they're not going to witness it. They had not witnessed the original event, but they witnessed those people. They witnessed those people that witnessed that event. They witnessed that all of these people said that. Like I've come across that amount of large number of people that has confirmed for me that China exists and that Napoleon existed and that the Civil War happened. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Mark? We can talk about it more later if you want.
Gotcha. Thank you.
No problem. So we confirmed that the universe has a beginning. That was the second step, confirming that the universe has a beginning. Now, the step 3 is proving the existence of the Creator, confirming God's existence. So, another premise: every building has a builder, every book has an author. Therefore, every action has a doer. Every action has a doer. So, if somebody told you that, for example, this book, whatever book that you have, it wrote itself automatically, the mind rejects that. If somebody told you this building, or even just this room, not just the whole building, this room built itself, the mind would reject it right away. Nobody would even entertain that as a possibility, right? Right off the bat. This universe, which is much more sophisticated and complex than any book or building, for sure has a creator. For sure. It's impossible that such complexity and such magnitude would not have a creator. Because a simple book, pages and ink and binding, if anybody is like into engineering or architecture, you would know like what it takes, the amount of work or planning or whatever that it takes to build a building. That's one aspect, just drawing it out. And like the exact measurements. That's why I respect engineers, because very, very precise. I like precision. Everything that has a beginning is in need of someone to make it occur. Therefore, this universe is in need of someone to make it occur. Simple. So everything that has a beginning is in need of the one who specified it with that beginning, because something cannot logically exist before itself to specify itself with existence. So that would be a contradiction. That would be a contradiction. You can't, something that is non-existent can't exist before itself to specify itself with existing or with being at a spot in time or with having the dimensions that it has. You didn't choose to be born. You didn't choose to exist. You didn't choose to have the features that you do. You didn't choose to have the features that you do. Those are signs that you are weak and in need. You're in need of the one who specified you with the attributes that you have. Yeah, and you're in need of a creator. So, and whatever's like you is like that too. Whatever is similar to you, even if not from all aspects, because, for example, we share similarities from certain aspects because we're all humans. We require air and food and clothing and shelter to survive. And we're affected by certain things in similar ways. So we have these similarities. And even still, we have similarities with the sun and the moon and the stars. Because even though we're completely different kind of creation, the moon and the sun, they're not human, but they exist in a place, they have a shape, specific shape, they have a specific color, they have a specific attribute. So we have a similarity with those things from those aspects. And whatever it's like me, then whatever I'm susceptible to, that thing is susceptible. I'm susceptible to annihilation, I'm susceptible to weakness. So I know that the sun is susceptible to annihilation, the sun is susceptible to weakness, etc. I know that I needed a creator to make me exist, or I needed something to make me exist, so therefore I know that about the sun as well. So, therefore, I know that whatever, if someone says that they worship something that's like me, then automatically I know that they're not worshiping the creator. They might be worshiping that statue, or that tree, or that cow, or that star, or that sun, or that moon, but I would know that those things, that they're not the creator, because they're like me. They're like me, they have a beginning.
So how does this, so I get the point, every building has a builder, every book has an author, but how does this dispute the fact that, so the opposing argument is that the world does have a creation, right? No one's denying that something created the world.
Some people do, atheists deny that.
Right, but they're arguing the fact that there are other sources, like there's a Big Bang, there's biology, there's things like, so no one's disputing this logic. There's something created the world, but they're arguing that it wasn't the creator, right? So like how does this dispute that? Like they're not saying things came from nowhere. They didn't come from somewhere, but they're saying they didn't come from the creator, right?
Yes, that brings us to our next point. Oh, dang. I skipped. Oh wait, actually I didn't skip it. I just completely left it out. So I don't have a slide for this next one. After confirming the existence of the creator, but so to go to that, the next step, which I skipped, is clarifying that God is the only creator and that He does not resemble the created things. Yani, what he was talking about is that, so you have some people that they do admit that this universe has a beginning and that it is an occurrence, that it is something that has a starting point, etc. But they just refuse, and I would choose to use that word, they refuse to say that it's the creator. They would say it's something, but not the creator. So now if you want to look into the psychology of that and the reasons for that, we'll have another session about that in a day. But to make it short, is the evidence for this is establishing, kind of touching on what I was saying earlier, is that whatever's like me can't create anything. Because you can't create anything. You're bound by space and time. If anyone could create anything, then there wouldn't be plastic surgeons. There wouldn't be people, wishing that they had something that they don't have. That's the human condition. We're limited. We're bound. So whatever it is that they say, if they attribute to it anything that is like me, then automatically it's disqualified. Automatically it's disqualified because it would be inherently weak, because it would be in need of the one who specified it with what it is, and whatever's weak, it cannot create anything. Whatever's weak cannot create anything. So if they were to say the Big Bang, what is that? If they were to define it, even if they were to say that it was a bunch of gases that were revolving around each other, and then that caused them to explode. I don't know exactly what they say, but I know that they say some type of stuff like that. That there was this, I don't know, some.
They say it's spontaneous. It's just
Yeah. That is kind of them saying, like, out of nowhere.
Exactly.
That is kind of them saying that. So now also you have the other aspect of just to not, I was, okay, so skipping that, they describe it as an explosion, correct? But an explosion doesn't have a will, doesn't have, it's not attributed with life. And these things that we see, right, this universe, is so specific that it's, the mind dictates that the one who made it the way it is has to be attributed with power and will. So even if someone were to say that nature made things the way that they are, but nature itself doesn't have will, or it is not attributed with life. And coincidence is also disqualified because it doesn't have, it's not attributed with will or power. So whatever quote unquote alternative that they want to use because of, for whatever reason they just don't want to say the creator, when it comes down to it, it would be something that would be disqualified from being the creator. It would be disqualified from being attributed with the attributes to make this reality the way it is. But I'm also gonna get to that when we get to the last step. So I apologize that I didn't have a slide for step number 4, which is clarifying that God is the only creator and that He doesn't resemble the created things. So the next step, step number 5, is proving the existence of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the way to do that is through mass witness transmission, the uninterrupted mass witness transmission. So the fact that he existed is confirmed historically, period. Nobody can, it's not like, some historians, they say that he didn't exist, or there's no mention of him in history, because he's that close in his historical timeline where there is evidence of him physically being on the earth. There's some of his clothes is still intact. Some of his hair is still intact and it's still preserved in museums. And also, some people have these personal traces, people that are related to him, that they trace their bloodline back to him. His grave is known. The place where he was born, all these places, they're still intact. You can still go right now to them and witness them yourself and see them. So he did exist. He did walk the earth, for sure. Some facts about him is that he was born in the year of the elephant. No, this is the year known as the year of the elephant. There's a story behind that, which we don't have time to go into. In the city of Mecca, and he died at the age of 63 in the city of Medina, and he is buried there. And he's truthful about everything he conveyed. We're going to prove that because that's step number 6. I'm sorry, step number 7. But step number 6. So after we confirmed that he existed, we confirm his prophethood. We confirm his prophethood. How? Through the miracle. Miracles. Yes. This is, now we're getting into something. The miracle is how we prove that someone is a prophet. The miracle is like the credential of a prophet. It's something that this miracle, it stands to say that this human being is telling the truth. They are sent by God. They are receiving revelation. That's what the miracle is for. So, I'm listing it now, but then I'm gonna talk about the miracle in depth. I'm gonna go into talk about the miracle. And how do we know that he performed miracles? If we didn't see it, we weren't there, we didn't witness it, through the uninterrupted mass witness transmission. Because there were miracles that he performed that occurred in front of thousands of people, like over 10,000 people witnessed the miracle. So we're going to talk about some of those. So the miracle itself, this is very important, especially in this day and age. Yes.
About the miracles, I have a question.
Yes.
On the day that the Dajjal comes,
I love it when people ask questions that the answer is contained in what I'm about to say. So I'm glad that you did that. I'm glad that you asked that question. Because that's exactly what I'm going to talk about. So, defining a miracle. A supernatural matter, and I'm going to explain each of these, but there's not a separate slide, so you're going to have to follow me in the words. A supernatural matter that happens in compliance with the claim of the one who claims prophethood, and it is clear of being discredited by something similar, and it cannot be imitated. I summarized it a bit, but the definition or this wording contains that. So, the first aspect of the miracle is that it's supernatural or extraordinary. Some like to say supernatural, some like to say extraordinary. So, extraordinary, supernatural. What we mean by that is that it breaks the laws of what people call the laws of physics or the laws of the norm, because this universe was norm has been reached. Something being supernatural by itself, that by itself does not make it miraculous. Supernatural by itself does not make it a miracle. It has to have the rest of these things. So, are you following that? Because that's the first thing. So, because the Dajjal does do, things do occur with him that are supernatural, but they don't have the rest of the description. So, the first thing is supernatural, meaning it breaches the law of the norm. And it happens in compliance with the claim of the one who claims prophethood. So, that supernatural thing that occurs, it serves to corroborate that person's claim of prophethood. So, what's excluded from that? Excluded from that is, like, for example, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was a man who lived at the same time of the Prophet as the Prophet ﷺ, that he claimed prophethood for himself. He said that he was a prophet too, and he was lying. He even sent a letter to the Prophet ﷺ saying, "We'll divide the world in half. You take one half, I'll take another half." And obviously that's terrible. It's bad. That person was wicked. But he claimed to be a prophet. And he had heard that the Prophet ﷺ, that he, for example, if someone came to him with like a swollen cheek, yes, I'm going to try to finish fast. So someone would come to the Prophet ﷺ with an ailment, and the Prophet ﷺ would put his honorable hand on that person's ailment, and he would say, "Bismillah," and then that person would be cured. So, for example, if that person, they were blind in one eye, then the Prophet ﷺ would put his hand on that person's eye, and his blindness would go away. Or if something was wrong with any of his organs, the Prophet ﷺ would heal that person by touching him and by saying, "Bismillah." That fake prophet, that false prophet, people would come to him for healing, and he would put his hand on that person and say a statement, and instead of, for example, that eye being cured from blindness, the other eye would go blind. He would have another ailment added to him. So that's supernatural, right? But it didn't happen in compliance with his claim of prophethood. That supernatural thing that happened with him served to belie him and to show the people that he's not a prophet in reality. And it is clear of being discredited by something similar, and it cannot be imitated, and it cannot be discredited. It cannot be debunked. So these are all the aspects of the miracle, and when all these aspects are present in a supernatural thing, that's what makes it a miracle. So, for example, walking on water by itself is not considered a miracle. Taking a knife and taking the blade and cutting or running across something and it not cutting, that by itself is not a miracle. It has to be accompanied with these things. The miracle is done by a man claiming prophethood, and that supernatural thing, it serves to corroborate his claim. That is the miracle. So the Dajjal, what he does is, number one, he doesn't claim to be a prophet. He claims to be God. He claims that he is God. So what he's speaking about is a person that some people, they call it the Antichrist. so it's an actual person, an actual human being, that he will come at a time where there's like a great famine and great drought on earth, because prior to his arrival, the sky will, or it won't rain on the earth. Like 1/3 of the rain will be withheld, and then another third, and then for a whole entire year before this person's appearance, it will not rain on the earth for a whole entire year. So imagine the devastation and catastrophe that will cause. And so he comes during that time, and so he tells people that he's God, and whoever worships him, then they'll have precipitation and vegetation and stuff like that. But so it's not a miracle. Why? Because number one, he didn't claim to be a prophet. Number two, this is something, one of those extraordinary things that's it's like a test. It's a calamity. So the people that Allah wills for them to be misguided, they'll follow that. They'll take that and they'll follow that. So that's why it's not a miracle, even though it would be considered supernatural. Sorry for speeding up. Examples of miracles, among them is the transformation of Moses' staff, sorry, it's a typo, into a real serpent, then it returning to its original state. Oh, no. And what took place for Jesus, such as reviving the dead. So those are examples of miracles. So Prophet Moses, I was going to go into the whole story, but since we don't have time, Prophet Moses, peace be upon him, he had an actual staff. And so what happened is that the Pharaoh, he challenged Moses. He got all the people together, and he brought, the Pharaoh brought some sorcerers, because if you study, or like what they say about ancient Egypt, is that they were heavy into sorcery, they were heavy into the occult, they were heavy into those types of things. And so they knew a lot about sorcery and about things like that. So the Pharaoh, he brought the sorcerers, and he challenged Prophet Moses, alayhi salam. And those sorcerers, what did they do? They had, they did something that caused an optical illusion, and so they had something like ropes, and they threw them to the ground, and it looked like those ropes were wriggling snakes. It looked like to the people that those ropes were wriggling snakes, because they were sorcerers. Sorcery is true, it's real. But yeah, it's something that people do. And so then when Prophet Moses, alayhi salam, what did he do? He had his staff, and he threw it on the ground, and it turned into a live serpent, not just like a regular small snake. It turned into a giant serpent that had a mane and that had fangs, and it would consume everything in its path, and it consumed the ropes of those sorcerers. And it was horrific to the extent that the Pharaoh himself, he wet himself. That it was horrific to that point. And then he picked the staff up, and it turned back into he picked up the serpent, and it turned back into a staff. The sorcerers, when they witnessed that, they knew that this is not sorcery, that this isn't a trick, that this is real. Yani that it's a miracle, and so they believed in him. And then the Pharaoh, he tortured them to death and killed them because they refused to leave Islam. So that's an example of a miracle. And what took place with Prophet Jesus, alayhi salam, such as reviving the dead. So a person would be dead, then Prophet Jesus, alayhi salam, would make supplication, that person would come back from the dead. That's supernatural, and it's in compliance with the claim of prophethood, because the Jews would say, bring this person back from the dead if you are a prophet. If you're telling the truth, show us a sign. So he would make dua, and this person would come back from the dead. It happened that a funeral procession was walking by, and they told him, if you're a prophet, make this person come back from the dead. He made supplication, the person came back from the dead. And because they were misguided and their hearts are corrupt, they said, oh, well, this person just recently died. It's possible that he was unconscious and the doctors just judged him as being dead, because actually that does happen sometimes, that some people, it has been documented that some people, they have been judged as dead by the coroner or whatever, but in reality they didn't die, and they were buried alive. They woke up in the grave, which is terrible and hard. But because something happens, there's like a condition that makes it, there's no signs that they're alive and whatever, so they'll be buried alive. But so then they said, if you're truthful, then bring this other person back to life, and they chose the grave of someone that had been dead for like 6 centuries. So the Prophet Jesus, he made dua, and the person came back from the dead, and the first thing that they said is, no one deserves to be worshipped except God. Believe in him, he's a messenger. Believe in Prophet Jesus, he's a messenger, etc. Those are examples of miracles. Some miracles of the Prophet ﷺ, is the crying tree stump. That was witnessed by a large number of people. I was going to get into the story of that, but just really, really short. So before the Prophet ﷺ had a minbar, which is like a platform where the Muslim stands and gives a speech, like in the mosque now you see in modern mosques, it's like a staircase, and then there's like a kind of like a place where the person stands and they deliver the speech from there. This is called a minbar. Some people might use the word pulpit. So before the Prophet ﷺ had that built, he used to use a tree stump, like a stump of a dead palm tree that he would lean on while he gave his speech. So then one time the companions, they said, can we build a minbar for you? And he said, if you want. And then so they built it. So the first time he used the pulpit, the minbar that was built for him, as opposed to the stump began to cry, like the same way that a baby cries, like the crying of a baby. And so when that happened, the Prophet ﷺ, he got down from the pulpit and he comforted. Just like how you comfort a baby. You know, when a baby's crying, anybody who's ever worked with babies or like in a daycare or something like that, child development, what do? You comfort the baby. And you cradle it, or you move it around, or you tap it, or you make like a hissing sound. Yes? So the Prophet ﷺ, he comforted the stump and he stopped crying. This was witnessed by everybody in the mosque. The springing of water from between his fingers. So the Prophet ﷺ was with the army, with the Muslim army, and they were traveling to a certain place, and they had run out of water, and they didn't have any water to make purification or to drink. So they came to the Prophet saying, we don't have any water to drink or to make wudu except what you have in your container. So the Prophet ﷺ, he put his honorable hand in the container, and the water was springing from between his fingers to the extent that everybody in the army, they made wudu and they drank and they had leftovers, and it was more than 10,000 people. This also replacing a man named Qatada, a companion named Qatada, he replacing his eye after it was knocked out. So there was a companion during the battle, he got injured and his eyeball was dangling on his cheek. Right? So the companions were saying, okay, we're going to cut it, so that, we can, just cut it and get rid of it or whatever. And the Prophet ﷺ told him, no, don't cut it. And so he took his honorable hand and he pushed it back in, and it was made whole again, and as if nothing had ever happened. This was also witnessed by a large number of people. And the food, saying Subhanallah in his hand. So whenever the Prophet ﷺ held food in his hand, it would audibly say Subhanallah, which is a statement of glorification that means that God is clear of being attributed with any attribute of the creation. That God is glorified beyond being attributed with any attribute of the creation. And that's just some. The Prophet ﷺ has thousands of miracles. Now, confirming that he was truthful. Oh, okay. All right. No.
Is that okay?
No.
Guys, it's 8:40, so I know some of you have places to meet because the event was supposed to be at 8:30. So if you need to step out, now's a good time to do that. But we have room for a little bit, so if you'd like to sit for a little bit, you're more than welcome to.
I'm almost done.
Yeah, but I know that some of you have places to be, so if you'd like to step out and have fun, please do. Otherwise, feel free to stick around for a little bit so you can hear the end of the time. Good job. That's okay. Almost done.
So, confirming that he was truthful in everything that he conveyed from God. So, because of the miracle, this supernatural matter that occurs for the one who claims prophethood, when challenged without any possible opposition by something similar to it, is as if the Creator is saying, my slave is truthful in everything that he conveyed from me. This is the intellectual proof of the miracle, because we know that the miracle is a supernatural matter, an extraordinary matter, something that the norm, the laws of physics have been breached, and who is the one that has the power to do that is the Creator. And so since this extraordinary matter is occurring for this person, and for this prophet that's claiming prophethood, then it is as if the Creator is saying, my slave is truthful in everything that he conveyed from me. This means that had it not been that he was truthful in his claim, which claim, the claim of prophethood, then Allah would not have made this miracle appear for him. So it is as if Allah said, this slave of mine is truthful in his claim of prophethood because I have made this miracle appear from him. That is the confirming that the Prophet ﷺ is truthful about everything that he can do. That's on top of the mental proof that it's possible that prophethood is to deliver this message to people so that they can know what's best for them, so that they can know the path of righteousness, so that they can know the path of success in this life and in the hereafter. And so that person that does that is sent for that specific purpose, they have to be attributed, or they have to be in a way that nobody can point the finger at them. This is why the prophets, they are impeccable. They are protected against what human beings normally fall into. They're protected against blasphemy. They're protected against enormous sins like fornication and drinking alcohol and murdering unjustly. They're protected against cheating, lying. They're protected against betrayal. They don't betray. So prophets, even though they're human, and even though from that human aspect they are creations, they are in need, they are weak, they are in need of food, clothing, and shelter. They feel emotions, they feel pain, but they're not like other men. Other men, they have pitfalls or downfalls. Other men, maybe even someone that is looked at as a role model or someone that is good, they might make a mistake. They might do something vile. But prophets, no. Because they have been chosen for this, so everything about them is created to attract. Everything about them is created to leave no excuse or justification for anyone to not believe them. That's what it comes down to. Who do we believe? We believe the news that was conveyed to us from this prophet. So that's what we follow. That's what makes us Muslim. That we believe that wholeheartedly. And regardless of anyone can come and say something that is opposite of what the prophet said, and it would be flushed down the wayside. Because it comes down to, do we follow the Prophet ﷺ, this man that had these extraordinary and amazing qualities, these high, lofty morals and ethics and way of being, and he had these miracles, etc., or do we follow so-and-so random person that has whatever, even if they're educated and they have a PhD or whatever? Do we follow the prophet, or do we follow random so-and-so? We follow the prophet. That's what makes us Muslim. Other people, they might not even, they'll follow a bunch of random so-and-so. They'll follow their own personal inclination. They'll follow their own opinion. So when they make their statements, or I was going to say that, and after all of this, no one would have the stance or the ground to criticize Islam. They might say that they don't believe, like we do, that they don't believe, for example, that drinking alcohol is forbidden or immoral or unethical or bad. They might not believe that, but they won't really have any grounds to make an argument with evidence. It just comes down to, by what standard are you judging that? Just because you like it? Just because this is how you feel about it? What? I'm saying that this was revealed, or this is the information that was conveyed to us by this prophet, and I've gone through these steps, for example, to confirm that this universe exists, that it has a creator, that creator doesn't resemble the creation, etc. That creator sent prophets, that this man named Muhammad existed, that it's confirmed that he had miracles, and therefore he's truthful in everything that he conveyed. What do you got? Just, I like it. I want to do it. So that's kind of my conclusion that I wanted to make about that, just to continue reading. So, because the one who deems the liar truthful is a liar. The one who judges a liar to be truthful is himself a liar, And it is impossible that the Creator would be a liar, because lying is a defect. Lying is not an attribute of perfection. And it's impossible that the Creator can. When I say impossible, I mean mentally impossible, meaning that the mind does not accept the existence of that. Because whatever is attributed with imperfection, then it's not the Creator. And for sure the Creator exists because this universe exists. So we see how we're going around in the circle. And so that proves that Allah only created the miracle for deeming His prophets as truthful, because every sane person knows that reviving the dead and transforming a stick into a serpent and the crying of the tree stump are not normal, meaning that it's not the norm, not the meaning that it's extraordinary. Everybody knows that that's extraordinary. And so we confirmed that the Prophet ﷺ is truthful in everything that he conveyed, and among what he conveyed is the Quran. Among what the Prophet conveyed, among what he conveyed is the Quran. The Quran remains intact, unchanged, and it will remain that way until there's no more Muslims on the earth. There will come a time when there will be no more Muslims on the earth, and the Quran will be raised from the earth. So, by proving that Muhammad is truthful, we prove that the Quran is truthful, and therein the confirmation of paradise and hell, as well as the prohibition of alcohol and other matters. Anything else that you want to talk about, anything else that you want to bring up, it's mentioned in the religion. We know it. So, but how can you prove that what the religion says is correct? You go through these steps. Now, obviously, you might be able to skip some steps, but basically what it comes down to is we receive this information through a prophet. And a prophet, the news that is conveyed by a prophet, it is definitive. It's knowledge. It will not be false. It cannot be false. So anything that contradicts the news conveyed from a prophet is rejected. So that's how we go about that. And that's for any issue. Then after this you can springboard to any issue. So for example, the beginning of creation, laws, things that have to do with ethics and morals and what's best for society, all of that, it's determined and designated by the religion. If someone would say, well, I think that it should be another way, who are you? By what standard? By what right? Right? That's what it comes down to. So as Muslims, our standard is the revealed law. That we follow this man named Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We believe wholeheartedly that whatever he conveyed from the Creator is truth. So we have been blessed with that. This is something that even if the person has a functioning sound mind, even if they receive the proofs, they still might not believe it. They still might not accept it in their hearts. So that issue of guidance and being misguided is something that is out of our hands. What we can do, we can provide the evidence, and we can make the logical argument. And then in the end, if the person does not follow that, there's nothing we can do about it. There are people who witnessed these prophets. Then there's been thousands of prophets that have walked on the earth. The first of them was Prophet Adam, the original man, the father of humanity. He was the first prophet messenger. He had the knowledge of how to mint money and farm the land and the names of all the things on earth, because otherwise how would we know, these basic fundamental knowledges were with us from the beginning, and then as time went on, we developed them. But otherwise, really, is there somebody that's going to believe that through trial and error you figure out that this seed bears this fruit, and that this material can be woven and made into cloth? That's far-fetched. That's far-fetched. Who will be able to survive through trial and error, trying different things? So humans, our beginnings our origins are noble. The origins of humanity are noble. Because the first human, the original man, Prophet Adam, he taught his children what they needed to survive in this life and in the hereafter. And later on, it was until after his death, generations after, like thousands of years after, that blasphemy occurred on the planet, among humans. The first blasphemy that happened was 3 generations after Adam, alayhi salam, when a certain group of people, they began to worship statues. They began to worship something other than the Creator. That's the first blasphemy that occurred. And then ever since then, there's been people that worship the Creator only, and there's people that worship things besides the Creator. Muslims, the believers, we worship the Creator only. We contend that only the Creator deserves to be worshipped. Only the Creator deserves the ultimate humbleness and submission, because He's the only one who has the power to create. The statue, the sun, the moon, the human being, the devil, fire, Buddha, do not deserve to be worshipped because they don't create anything. They're creation. They don't deserve worship. And we believe and confirm that this man named Muhammad, that lived over 1,000 years ago, alayhi salam, was a prophet and messenger sent to all humans and jinn, and that he's truthful about everything that he conveyed. That's what makes someone a believer. That's what makes somebody a Muslim. We believe that. And so that's how we know, for example, what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, etc. And answers to the most important questions. Now, that I'm not saying that we know everything, because there are things that are hidden from us. There are things that are kept a mystery. There are things that there is a knowledge that is unattainable. Nobody will ever get it. And it'll be futile to even try. But the most important things, we know. The most important things, we know them. And even there's a lot of things that we know, that we're capable of knowing as human beings. But to search for the unattainable knowledge, etc., then that would be futile, an exercise of futility. Barakallahu feekum, and I thank you for spending this time. It's officially over now, and if you have any questions,